Hey, welcome back to Page Break Podcast with Richard Robertson, Brian Martindale. We are the owners of Genesis Publishing House. We are going to do a very quick Q&A. We've had a lot of authors recently either email in or comment on podcasts or just send us personal messages asking a bunch of questions. We're actually going to open this up for questions in the chat right now as well. So if you're listening and you have questions, even if you're listening to the recorded version, you can put questions in and we'll get back to you on those. But we've got a bunch of questions about self-publishing in general, or assisted self-publishing in general, and Genesis and what we can do for you. Real quick, I'll clarify. We are an assisted self-publishing firm. We work with authors everywhere from idea all the way through book into production and into distribution. So we can help with every aspect of author coaching, editing, design, distribution, marketing, kind of the whole shebang, or we can help as little as you need, bits and pieces. So that's what Genesis does, everything to take an idea all the way to distribution. And so we're going to dive right into some questions because we don't want to take a ton of time. We hope that plenty of people listen. We know sometimes long podcasts prohibit that. So I'm going to ask the first question that we've got sent in here, and Brian can answer, and then maybe I'll chime in. But do I need to be finished with my manuscript before talking to a publisher?
Yeah. So who's that? I want to address the person. Who's that question from? I don't see it. Is that
Gene?
Gene? Okay, Gene. Thank you for your question. Well, the answer is no. It does not have to be done. We've worked with publishers in the past where they've wanted it done, just based on how they, do their production process, maybe to keep a flow going correctly. For us, the answer is no. You don't have to be done. In my opinion, it actually is beneficial for the author, especially if you're going to be working with an editor. I think it's beneficial to not be done personally, just because getting that editorial help as you're finishing up your project or your manuscript tends to improve the overall process. For the final manuscript, getting that help as you go. It would be like Rich and I joke about not being, carpenter type people. We could have an idea on what we want, but we're not going to be the ones to build it. So it's kind of similar with the manuscript. You can have an outline, you can have a rough draft, but getting that person to help you do that as you're going, in my opinion, makes a better product.
Yeah, I agree. The earlier you can jump in, the better. And even for cover design, sometimes it makes it feel a little more, unlike some of the kind of mass market publishers, author mill type places, will let you dice it up payment wise however you want. And same thing with, we don't make you have the manuscript done before we start the cover. So having the cover started and seeing that first concept, sometimes like even encourages some of our authors to write more. So I think the sooner the better that you can start talking with us.
Yeah. Yeah. The cover definitely gets people motivated. Let me look here on the next one. This is, I don't know if it's Sander or Saunders, so I apologize, Sander or Saundra, however your name is pronounced. What are some misconceptions that authors may have through their first time of publishing? Rich, I'll let you go ahead and start, and then I'll chime in on my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the misconceptions probably stem around cost and time. Because I'm assuming if you've got to the place where you're hiring us or thinking about hiring us, then you understand, like everybody should understand, that traditional publishing is not really an option for new authors unless you are famous or you have a huge platform. If you're just Jimmy from Rhode Island and you've written a cool 31-day devotional, you're not getting traditionally published. Not ever. It's not going to happen. It cannot happen until you've proven that you're a commodity worth investing a couple $100,000 in. So assuming you've overcome that, then I would say cost and timeline are the two that people don't understand very well. The cost is essentially broken down into editing, production, distribution, and marketing. And so I think that you know, you need to figure out kind of what your budget is and find something that fits into your budget. But it's not going to be $20,000 to publish your book. It's also not going to be $200. So, I think our medium ticket, like a middle of the road ticket for us, is right around $2,500 to $3,000. I think that's probably a little lower than some places, but it's definitely higher than others. And then timeline, the big thing is it takes us about 3 to 4 months to publish a book, but there are some things we can't do until the author is engaged. So if we send you a cover and you don't send us anything back, we're not moving on to anything else until we know. So those are two big misconceptions. Cost is pretty reasonable and flexible. Let's split it up in over 3 payments if you need us to, or whatever that is. But don't let cost. If cost is the one thing stopping you from publishing, let's talk, and we'll figure something out. And then timeline. If you need a book out by the middle of the summer, then we probably need to start now, because it's not a 12 or a 2 week process. It's a 12 to 16 week process.
Right. Yeah. For me, the way I would answer that, a lot of people, because we work with a lot of, busy professionals, just like we all are. Even if you're not a, career minded person, you've got family obligations or whatever you're involved in. And I think a lot of people think, okay, once I start this process, I'm going to be consumed by this book every minute, every waking minute of the day. I'm going to be working on this with, design and production editors. Um, and that's just not the case. Uh, at least, once you get past editing, and even editing, there's not really a lot on your plate at that point. You're going to approve things as we go in different phases, but that's why you hire us to do everything for you. So as long as you like what we've done and say it looks good, let's move on. Or you may say, hey, can we revise this? Can we change this or that? Um, then the answer is yes to that as well. But it's not something where, you know, well, I don't have time to do this right now because I've got so much going on. We hear that sometimes, and in our opinion, that's not true, because it's not something that, you're not taking on this massive um, time commitment, because that's just simply not how this works.
Yeah, that's a great answer. We've got another question in from Aaron. How long does it typically take, and what factors most affect cost? So we've kind of touched on those. So I'll just gloss over them real fast. 12 to 14 weeks is pretty standard on publishing a book. Cost is it's probably not going to be cheaper than $2,000 unless you have some real, a lot of stuff already done. But it can be anywhere from 2,000 to 4,500, 5,000. I think if you do all the marketing and everything, you're probably 6 or 7,000. So somewhere in that neighborhood. But I've got one for Brian to answer here from Elizabeth. Who's not a good fit for Genesis? I think that's a cool question.
Um, hmm, that's a tough one. Well, first and foremost, anyone who looks at our site, we are a faith-based company. That's something that we will not budge on. So we're not going to publish a book that goes against biblical principles. Um, at the same time, that does not mean that your book has to necessarily be faith-based. Um, we've done educational books. We've done books on sports, finance, management, um, therapy. I mean, there's all kinds of books that we've done. Fiction. Um, so it's not necessarily, yes, this has to be a book that I would give to my pastor, to get their approval. Um, but yeah, if you're going to publish something that goes against uh, our beliefs, as a Christian company, we're not going to be rude about it. We're just going to simply say this isn't a good fit. And more than likely, we can point you to the right, to someone who will be willing to do that. I mean, Rich and I have been in publishing for, at this point, coming up on 16 years. Um, so
Yikes.
we know a lot of people in this industry, and we're happy to give you advice on what to do or maybe what not to do. Um, but yeah, if as long as you align with our values from a Christianity standpoint, um, there's not going to be any issues publishing your book.
Yeah, that's good. Good answer.
Let me look here. And Rich, you're being more professional. You're looking on your computer while I have to look at my phone. This is John T. So I don't know what your last name is, John. Looks like it starts with a T. And you are from Alabama. Um, so let's see here.
I wonder how John liked the Indiana-Alabama game this last week.
I'm guessing after that comment, John will not publish with us since we are Hoosier fans. Sorry, John. Hope you're not a big college football fan. Okay, so the question is, what sets you apart from other publishers? Um, it's a good question. We get that question a lot. I think, and I think we should both answer this, Rich, but I shouldn't say I think. I know what separates us. It's the knowledge. I mean, Rich and I, like I said, we've done this for 16 years. We've been a part of, Rich, what we say, 11 different publishing imprints over the past 16 years. People that have asked us to help them set up the process or get advice on how to do it better. Almost every time uh, we end up moving elsewhere because the people that we were working for became revenue driven. All they cared about was
Yeah,
revenue.
yeah, for sure.
So with us, we're a small operation. We do that on purpose. Um, Most people that we've worked with try to grow too fast. They see the money, they see they see the revenue coming in, and then they don't focus on you, the author. They don't hire more support, service, production people, whoever. You fall further down the queue, and you're not John T. You're Project 47812, and there's no connection. There's no. There's just no. It's almost like a robotic process. So that'd be number one. Secondly, we are literally the only hybrid publisher in this industry that uses live editors that you can literally speak to.
Yeah,
I don't care what any
that's the that's
publisher
the
tells you;
that's the
it's
biggest
not
one for
true.
sure.
It's yeah, it's not true when they tell you that. I know that for a fact. Nobody uses live editing but us. Um, if you don't
And
think
you
that's
can
a big deal, if you don't think it's a big deal, then you've never been through it before. It's a
yeah, you
massive
can even talk to your editors here where with other companies, even if you have a live person who's looking at it after they run it through their computer program, you certainly can't get on a Zoom call with that editor and they give you advice and walk you through what to do next.
right. And if they do have something like that that they don't advertise and say, "Oh, we can do that," you're probably going to pay 15 to $20,000 for something like that.
Yeah.
So that would be those two areas are the main things, in my opinion, that set us apart.
Yeah, I've got 3 more quick ones because I know we're running up against our time, but one is very rarely can you call the owners of a company. Do they give you your cell phone number? And we get Christmas cards. We text authors about sporting events, especially if we're on opposite sides of that sporting event. But we've made a lot of friends over this. But yeah, generally you don't. If it's 8:30 and you've got a weird question about your book, then you're waiting until tomorrow before you're getting that answered. Where you know you can text Brian and I, and we generally answer right away, or we hop on a call and just chat it out. So that's one thing that I think is extremely different, and the reason why we have almost 100% satisfaction rate versus some of these other places that have 40, 50, 60% or whatever. But two very just nuts and bolts things. We don't split royalties. Every other company that I know of, everything in the industry used to be 70-30 in favor of the author. Now most of them are 50-50. But we take no royalty split. We actually set the royalties to go directly to you. We never even see them. We don't know what your royalty check is. And same thing with books. When you want to order your own book, we don't mark it up and sell it back to you. We set you up with a distribution account under our umbrella, so you get our discount. But you're able to just order books at wholesale price without us making, because the normal process is you call your publisher gets the quote for you from the printer, they mark it up X number of dollars, and then they make profit off the top, selling your book back to you. Um, we just don't do that. We want to make money, we do, but we just don't feel like that's the place to do it. So those are the reasons I think we are different, other than the ones you mentioned are big ones for sure.
Right. Right. All right. We got
I've got
time for a
one
couple
last.
more here
Yeah,
or one more.
I got one last one on my side. Vicky says, "What's the difference between traditional and independent self-publishing?" That one's pretty should be a pretty easy one.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it back a few minutes ago. So for those of you who don't know, traditional publishing would be, hey, I'm John Smith, and here's my book. I'm going to send it in to you. And as a traditional publisher, I read it and I'm just blown away. And it's the greatest thing I've ever seen, greatest thing I've ever read. I run to the acquisition editor's office and say, put everything down. You've got to read this right now. This is a bestseller. We have to buy this book. In a perfect world, that's what would happen. Um, Publishing, it just simply doesn't work that way. You get on these writer blogs and all this stuff, and people will feed you this information on you know, how you get traditionally published and things like that. Like Rich said, it's like a one in a million type thing. Can it happen? Of course, it can happen. Um, are the odds better of Rich and I winning the gold medal at this upcoming Winter Olympics in ice skating? They're probably about the same odds. And I've never asked. Well, I take that back. I think I've been on the skating rink twice in my life, like in seventh grade. So probably not going to win a gold medal next month, and I doubt Rich is either.
No, I've been
Not
ice
too many
skating more than that.
6'6", 280 guys ice skating in the Winter
Yeah,
Olympics, for what I've seen at least. Obviously, I'm being trying to be funny here, but no, it just doesn't happen. So if your thought process is, well, I'm going to be the one, where it is going to happen, more than likely you're sitting here 3 years down the road thinking, man, I wish I would have just published my book 3 years ago.
yeah,
Um,
because traditional publishers are looking for a few things, but the main one is this a marketable commodity? And if you use assisted self-publishing, whatever avenue you go through, if you sell 4 or 5,000 books, then all of a sudden, maybe the conversation is different because you have some sort of numbers to back up whether or not your book is good, but they're not really looking for good. They're looking for what they feel like they can market. I mean, I've read traditionally published books that made me want to bang my head against a concrete block. They were bad, but they felt like they could market them based on the person's name or trends or whatever. So, but the other two things about traditionally publishing that people don't understand is they're like, well, I want to get an advance. I want to get paid. Well, an advance is not getting paid. It's an advance against future royalties. So if you don't sell enough books to earn your advance, then you owe the publisher that money back. They're not just giving it away for free, but they also buy the rights to your story. Those are the two things I think people don't understand about traditional publishing is you do not retain creative control once the traditional publisher and you sign the contract. They can tweak, move, change, whatever. And that ends up rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. It's why a lot of huge authors, Stephen King style size authors don't use publishing houses a lot anymore. They just do it themselves because he doesn't really need a publishing, right? He's got enough money and enough name brand that he can just do it himself. So, those are some things to think about on traditional publishing. And I don't know if you have a quick one. We're running out of time over here, but
let me see if there's a real quick one. Okay. Let's see. What if I've already? Here's a good one. We've got 6 or 7 more here, but let's end this one. What if I've already published? Um, this is actually something we do. Shoot, I would
a
say
lot.
a couple times a month, easy.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes people will switch over to us for a couple reasons, and maybe they want to revise what they've had already. Um, Maybe the publisher went out of business. Maybe they realize that it didn't get edited properly. Maybe they want to change the cover. whatever it is, the answer is yes. We can redo a book, market it as a second edition, revised edition, um, and we can get creative. There's not necessarily a one step or one size fits all um, process that works, but the answer 99% of the time is yes. We can switch over to Genesis and we can explain that process depending on where you previously published and walk you through that. But yeah, the answer is yes.
Yeah, as long as you haven't signed your rights away in one of those deals that I just talked about, then yeah, we'd be glad to redo it. We can get creative with the financing part. But yeah, we're over on time. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll probably, because of the response, we'll probably do another one. And again, if you're listening to this recorded, definitely put questions in the comments, and we'd love to help. Rich and Brian with Page Break Podcast and Genesis Publishing House, we are out.
All right. Thank you.